Have you ever thought about how these ancient titanic creatures like Zunisha, the Sea Kings, and now Biblo keep appearing at the center of One Piece's greatest secrets? But what if these beasts are more than just old, clever animals, huh? What if they are actually the oldest survivors of the ancient One Piece worlds? The two other worlds previously destroyed in fire and by floods. The last few months I've become absolutely obsessed with finding this out. I've been digging into these bad boy secrets, living with animals, becoming an animal, and a massive revelation that has now finally dawned on me. Biblo, Ratatoskr, Zunisha, and the Sea Kings, deep inside the primal nature of these ancient beasts, I think that they are much more human than we've all ever realized, and I want to start by punching in on my bird, Biblo, the owl librarian of Elbaf, who I haven't really talked about all that much despite our years of adventures in Elbaf at this point. Also, let me quickly let out Gojo. I don't know, he looks like he wants to leave. You want to go out? All right. Bye-bye. All right, let me really talk to you for a hot minute here. This big owl here is super weird, and he keeps getting called out for that. I mean, as recently as chapter 1182, when Saul states, "I'm even more perplexed by you than I was before," which, after it's revealed, Biblo knows about a secret tunnel in Elbaf behind the Owl Library and took all of the books from the Library of Ohara there in order to protect them from the fire. Biblo, buddy, why are you the way that you are? By the way, like seriously, just look at the bird. Biblo has the same emu eyes that we've come to associate with other figures of great mystery, most notably Zunisha, which is only furthered by the fact that Biblo also has been confirmed to be alive for centuries at this point. He is a really ancient, really smart owl. And most importantly, he is unique. Biblo has a devil fruit of his own and is one of the only weird human behaving animals we see that is not actually a zone fruit user. And that's because Biblo seems to have the Iku Iku no Mi, the Grow fruit, a paramecia type devil fruit that allows them to enlarge and reduce items that enter its territory. And it's at this point where things immediately start getting very suspicious and weird, because Oda very intentionally could have just made Biblo a giant who ate the owl fruit. Done. Very easy explanation. We've seen humans become animals, animals become humans, weapons become animals, and really all kinds of this nonsense. But instead, Oda went out of his way to go and make Biblo feel kind of off. And not in a threatening way or Oda making a mistake, but more in a wait, what actually are you type of way.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Which I gotta say, to me, sticks out like a sore thumb, because this bird was chosen to protect the entire legacy and ancient wisdom of Ohara. Thanks, buddy. All these books here survived the emu raid because this giant owl happened to know where to move the books, happened to understand their intrinsic value and what it means for the world, and also just happened to protect them for years on end. Oda could have used Saul alone for this role easily, but nope. The librarian here is a big ancient animal with sentience and emu eyes and deep knowledge. Like, he specifically paired Saul with an ancient giant owl that has lived for centuries and seems to know way more than anyone around him, someone that Saul specifically is very much weirded out by. No matter what I try to speculate here, Biblo very clearly is an outlier because he is not a person who just ate a zone fruit and then stayed in his zone or hybrid form like, Morgan does. And realistically, we know that can't be the case for some other zones too because of a handful of reasons. Ratatoskr, for example, we now know is a squirrel from the Void Century whose essence was speculated to become a fruit by Jarul and then was somehow fed to the hammer Ragnir. That is how Ragnir, the hammer squirrel, even came to be, and unfortunately, he can't speak human to inform any of us, of anything different. Maybe Chopper can talk to Ragnir, that'd be pretty rad, but nonetheless, he's a hammer that ate the mythical squirrel fruit, but seems to have extensive knowledge and agency, being familiar with Emu himself. Don't believe me? I mean, just look at him lose his cool when he sees the devil. Ragnir was about to go and throw some hands, or I guess throw some paws. Also, shout out to Oda at this point for playing with us theorists a little bit here and letting reveals like Ragnir having a devil fruit be a mystery for at least a little bit. He could have easily just shown us that the moment that he turned into a squirrel, but I do appreciate a few months of not knowing and, grinding my gears and everything. But what's even more odd, I think, is that Emu even talks directly to Ragnir. He literally directly speaks to a squirrel, neglecting Loki and the Nidhogg completely for a moment. It's as if they are familiar with one another. Like, Emu may have known Ragnir and, even further back, the real Ratatoskr at some point before something squirrel actually became a devil fruit. Which I don't know if you feel the same way, but I just need to understand. I need it, man. Like, why does the hammer get to be a fruit with consciousness? And really think about how bizarre that interaction actually is for just a moment here. Emu isn't talking to a hammer like somebody talking to a pet. Emu talks as though there is an actual, human-like identity here. Looking at the interaction, he speaks to him almost on, equal footing, which is just not how he talks to people at all any other time. As though there is somebody that he knows behind the eyes. Somebody recognizable to Big Papa Moo. Now, initially, I just sort of accepted this because, one, there was a lot of other stuff going on, but two, One Piece sometimes just is kind of insane. Yeah, sure, magic, squirrel, hammer, whatever, they know each other. But hold on just a moment. Step back, take a deep breath for a second. Why does a weapon seem to have a personality? Why does it seem to have memories? Why does it feel familiar to ancient godlike figures? Very clearly, there's something really weird here, and I'm gonna get to the bottom of it with you today. Maybe that answer lies in another great carrier of knowledge too, because obviously I cannot talk about curious human-like animals without discussing Zoe himself, big boy girl? I don't know, Zunisha. Just like Biblo, as I previously mentioned, he has those same weird emu eyes, something that's kind of making me question if divinity is somehow involved here as well, but we actually know more about him or her, I don't know, than any of the others. Zunisha specifically can just speak with humans through the voice of all things, which has let us know that he's an ancient trader of some sort that was then punished by someone to roam the seas for a bunch of time. He also seems to be directly depicted on the mural with the Earth God / Earth King standing upon his head, it seems, which kind of leads me to believe that he betrayed Emu, who seems to think a lot of people are actually traitors like Nidhogg or Lily, and presumably also Zunisha. Lots of people did Emu very wrong, apparently. Now, while we're on Zoe, the whale tree on Zoe is also super interesting to me for a couple of reasons. A, because there's a massive whale on the mural falling down with a bunch of rain next to it and the entire whale connection to Laugh Tale, but also B, the road poneglyph is hidden in the whale tree, which raises another huge point for the animals. Zunisha was trusted by someone, Lily Joyboy himself, to carry the part of the map to Laugh Tale, and it was hidden inside of a big whale on his back. Then Zunisha also just knows Joyboy directly, clearly being friends or, at least a nakama relationship with him in some way, shape, or form. Zunisha doesn't say, oh, Luffy here reminds me of Joyboy. Zunisha also doesn't say, this power resembles Joyboy. No, the moment Gear 5 is awakened, Zunisha basically goes, Joyboy is here, right? Which means that somehow, after 800 years at the very least, this elephant remembers something so specifically that a heartbeat, a rhythm, or a feeling immediately triggers recognition here. Humans just forgot the entire Void Century entirely, even with tons of books still apparently, surviving it, as we see with the Library of Ohara. It's just not fully pieced together. But apparently, Zunisha forgot nothing elephants really do never forget, huh? It seems. So what we have to go off of here is that Biblio, Zunisha, the Sea Kings, Ratatoskr, they're all carriers of great ancient knowledge, but why? And how? What is actually going on with these big old animals? Well, what if Zunisha, Biblio, the Sea Kings, Ratatoskr, what if they're all not just animals? What if they are the gods of the One Piece world who have been forced into these weird animal forms? Or potentially, maybe they've adopted these forms voluntarily. Or maybe it's not gods, but just, guys, and that kind of works too. Stick with me here, I've got a reason that really, I think, makes a ton of sense, but just to, cover the bases quickly, I think it really tracks. That's why their eyes share the same connection to Emu, because they may just be ancient beings who have lived throughout many One Piece worlds, the actual gods of One Piece. And it does raise a question about Mihawk, Robin, and Hakuba, who also get these eyes for some reason. So, is that actually it? Let's dig a little bit deeper here. The eyes specifically are something that I've always been fascinated by, and I do think that maybe something Emu currently has just been revealing they have might explain something else about these animals, something way bigger than we previously ever thought, because one thing that has started becoming increasingly weird in modern One Piece, to me at least, and I think to you as well, is that Oda keeps blurring the line more and more between people, devil fruits, souls, inherited will itself. Early in the series, devil fruits felt pretty straightforward, right? You eat a fruit, you get a power, become rubber, become smoke, become a giraffe or whatever. Cool, that's it. Lately though, devil fruits have kind of started feeling less like abilities and more like other people inside you. Really, think about the way that Emu keeps talking to people with zone fruits. Luffy, Loki, Ragnar, even Zebek and Roger, it's as if he's speaking to Ratatoskr, the squirrel. He's speaking to Nidhogg, not Loki. He's speaking to Davy Jones, not Zebek. Emu knows the modern characters. He says, bring me Vivi, and clearly can separate her from Lily, so the same should, absolutely apply to Luffy, Joy Boy, Nika, but no, those ones he just keeps calling the same thing, almost ignoring the vessel of the fruit. He's almost like, Loki doesn't really matter, I don't care about him, I care about Nidhogg who's inside of him. So what I want you to ask yourself now is, what if it's all connected to Emu's fancy newly revealed power, Maki? Maki, aka Omen, the demon's will that exists in all living things, might very well tie into the voice of all things and Haki, but in a way that we collectively may not have fully understood yet. I believe they could well all be one or various versions of the same power. Now, what do I actually mean by that? Well, I think that zone fruits might actually just carry the Maki or spirit life force of these beings inside of them, which would then explain why Ragnar, an inanimate object with the Ratatoskr fruit, seems to suddenly have memories and sentience that's completely different from Luffy or Loki. Ragnar is the squirrel with eternal life now thanks to being an inanimate hammer. Ragnar gets to keep his memories from being in a fruit because he didn't get eaten by a person. Whereas Loki and Luffy, who are their own people, are kind of tapping into the powers of the zone spirits, but maybe not their memories yet. And this kind of honestly starts solving a very weird inconsistency we've had for many, many years with zone fruits, because zones repeatedly act differently than any other devil fruit type. And by any other devil fruit type, I mean the two others that we know, Paramecia and Logias. Because zones have always been described as kind of having a will of their own. Not occasionally, not metaphorically, very literally. We actually hear that phrase directly. Certain fruits seemingly choose people. Certain awakened zones can overpower their users entirely, like we see in the Jailer Beasts of Impel Down, where it's just the fruits being in full control and not the people who ate them. Okay, that's cool, I guess. I kind of like that idea, but it doesn't still fully work for all of these ancient animals, because it may be the case for Ragnir and the beasts or creatures inside the fruit, but what about Biblo? What about Zunisha? Because we kind of pretty much know for certain that they aren't zone fruit users. Zunisha, for one, walks in the ocean, the natural enemy of devil fruits, and actively sprays seawater from his trunk on himself. A zone fruit user wouldn't be able to do that, not without being weakened or in constant pain. Unless Zunisha is in constant pain, which I don't know, maybe they are. And Biblo just has eaten a completely different devil fruit altogether, which means that he can't be a zone fruit user either. Well, let me ask you this. What if they are the gods' minds in the bodies of animals, transferred into these big beings by perhaps an ancient user of the Ope Ope no Mi or something? I mean, we kind of know that everything you'd really need for this to work is possible with the Ope Ope no Mi. We're talking about a fruit that can perform body swaps, personality transfers, and even immortality operations. So who's to say that someone didn't go a little bit crazy with it and in an effort to keep the history alive, put some key players inside the bodies of animals with super long lifespans? Or just straight up immortality surgery, right? And at this point, I definitely want to shout out a user that I had in a live stream I hosted recently on the channel, DizzyBLB182, who put this idea on my radar when they proposed the idea that the Sea Kings might be former people transferred into the Sea Kings' bodies with the Ope Ope no Mi fruit, since they seem to have super high IQs and just human-like consciousness. But I also think it goes even a step further. Zunisha, Biblo, these ancient perplexing beings, they might just be people in there who can't speak words because they're now inside animal bodies. But maybe this principle is possible even without something like the Ope Ope no Mi, because if some ancient civilization was like experimenting with transferring consciousness, souls, Maki, right, or whatever this force ultimately turns out to be in the end, then suddenly the idea doesn't sound completely insane anymore, I personally would say. I actually think that Louis Arnaud would be a perfect choice for being Biblo. I mean, come on, he was specifically used to introduce this Elbaf thing to us, and I do think that maybe that's because he is the lore keeper of Elbaf. Just a hunch. The voice of all things, Maki, whatever it is, this force present in all beings, that's how they talk, which is why voice of all things users can actually hear and communicate with them. Hell, maybe we will even get a Biblo speaking role after Elbaf ends to kind of double down on this. I would not be surprised. Or maybe it's actually even more simple than that. What if the natural inhabitants of this world are just these big giant animals, and humanity is essentially the invasive species to begin with? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Oda created a situation like the Oz books, you know, the ones that the Wizard of Oz is based on. We do know that Oda loves Oz because he's redrawn the characters even. If you're unaware, in the world of Oz, a fundamental core aspect of the world is that the animals can just speak like humans here. It's fun, it's goofy, and it's a classic thing in anime and media as well. Fables, Elbaf backwards, do the same things, right? Personifying animals because they're innocent and true. They aren't deceitful like humans are. Now, the One Piece world is full of such insane exotic creatures to the brim, almost in every single arc. So maybe the core species of the planet before these sky races came down from the moon were just big old talking animals. Oda loves taking absurd ideas and making them emotionally important later on, and all these animals are definitely at the core of this very thing. Like, imagine a world where the oppressed class were animals and Joy Boy or Nika were their proud defenders. But after Emu won, maybe they were cursed to lose their speech somehow, right? Pretty much Wizard of Oz thing. And the Harley text and mural might actually reveal this as well. On the Harley text, it's back, thank God, it says that the slaves or the enslaved prayed, but not the enslaved people of the world. And in the mural, we see the rows of animals boarding the Noah-like boat, right? So could it be that the beings who pray to Nika, the slaves, were actually the animals, not the people? Like, was this act being depicted on a mural actually a critical part of history where we see how zone fruits even came to be? The animals, the natives of the blue planet, needed to escape, and in a last-ditch effort, the forest god may have turned them into fruits to preserve their life force. I mean, for all we know, there must have been something before the first One Piece world. We know that dinosaurs used to be around for a long time, right, in the One Piece world. So who is to say that there wasn't a World Zero right before the first world, and the first world only started when humans and, the other sky races actually arrived on the planet? That would be an absolutely insane turn of events, and absolutely something that Oda would do, I personally feel. Animals are such a key aspect of the entire series, always connecting to characters like Loki, who's super good with animals, Roger, who's good with animals, Luffy, who is always shown being so well attuned to nature and the animals around him, and literally being called Monkey D. Luffy, right? Happiness and kindness being the key factors here. These characters are the friends of animals, the people who carry Joy Boy's or Nika's will, befriending animals wherever they go. Maybe this is all just a deep threat showing us Nika's role in the first world, the liberator of the natural races of the One Piece world, the animals, but does that also explain why Oda chose to use animals as the carriers of this ancient knowledge instead of, say, robots like Emeth that might be walking around everywhere? No, not quite, but I do feel like we're getting really close here. In fact, I do believe that Oda is playing on some very classic literary tropes present in myths, fables, various other stories, because Oda seems to be using animals as stand-in for the ancient peoples. Maybe even the gods, as we see in Skypiea with the snake representing the gods. But most importantly, I think that they're meant to show us the natural side of the world as it is supposed to be. Imu is kind of this industrial meddling with the planet type of man, and maybe even the ancient kingdom before him. But on the flip side, these animals like Biblio and Zunisha seem to represent nature. A force that surpasses man, has always surpassed man, and has outlived man throughout many centuries. Also, Zunisha just happens to host an ancient race of intelligent, sentient, talking human animals on its back that we don't know actually where they originally come from. We just know they lost their home and then took refuge on Zunisha. And I think all of that lines up pretty well with a key plot point that Oda tends to put into almost every arc, because of one thing: man versus nature. I want you to really think about this. What Oda repeatedly does in so many arcs is put nature and humanity into conflict, but not in a simple humans bad, trees good type of way. It's usually more like humanity trying to control things that were never meant to be under human control. The world government literally draws lines across the world with these massive bridges. Kaido ruined the beautiful land of Wano with his industry, and Alabasta was thrown into disarray by Sir Crocodile. Big Moo and plenty of the villains seem obsessed with industry and, engineering and ancient tech and maintaining control forever. Meanwhile, nature in One Piece is in absolute chaos. Knock-up streams launch islands into the sky, sea kings casually drag ships into the depths, weather changes every 2 minutes and 20 feet in the Grand Line. The world itself almost feel like it's rejecting being controlled. And I do think that Oda seems to have chosen the animals here because they represent something that the series is trying to make a play on. Humanity's intervention in the One Piece world, their greed, has ruined the planet. And I honestly don't think that this point is even controversial, because that's the entire point of the Harley text: toppling Imu and industry to bring a new dawn. And so, with that in mind, who better to reveal that truth to the new era of men than the animals who survived the ending of these various previous One Piece worlds, who have been subjugated by the humans and the other races who have been fighting for dominion over their planet. The gods of this world turned into its greatest beings, the ancient animals. And this could actually tie really well into several stories that Oda has been pulling from. The Noah, that's Joy Boy or whoever is saving the animals, the innocent inhabitants of the world that should survive the big cleansing. Gods turning into animals, if that angle is correct, well, those are just the classic tales of many gods, like the Greek gods, Zeus, who turned into animals all the time to accomplish their missions, like banging girls. Just a lot of banging most of the time. Or how about the nuclear allegory that Oda seems to very clearly be going with the Forbidden Sun? Well, here in Japan, where it's kind of really hard to explain how present and how ingrained the nuclear fear and this everything is into the culture here. You have to live here to get a feeling for it, but right here, Godzilla, a giant animal, serves kind of as nature's natural wrath who claps back against humanity for their greed and innovation and kind of opening Pandora's box with nuclear energy. Hell, even biblical elements like the devil and Jesus and all that stuff, animals are always a core aspect. The snake being the devil, the animals present at the birth of Jesus. The animals of this planet, they're the ones who were chosen by Oda to carry the big secrets because they're the only ones who are truly built on honesty. Beings that Imu wouldn't even bat a second eye at because they are not the enemies that he actually feared. They were just creatures who shouldn't come close to the likes of Nika, Zaza, Joy Boy, but now they're the ones who might ironically end up being his undoing. There's no lying, there's no deceit, they're the ones who carry the real truth because they're pure and earnest and also have lived for a very long time. Unlike Imu, this massive liar here, mentiroso. But maybe he's a big animal too. I mean, I've honestly left out one massive creature throughout this entire video that maybe has been there, like a big, not elephant, but the Hell Flame Serpent. Again, Imu has the same eyes as all these animals. He's surely gonna be a key part of the endgame, right? But I do think I know what's going on with him. I think that Mu is the serpent, and he's actually controlling the human Imu. And if you want to know all about that crazy theory and how it ties into what we talked about right now, you really should check out that video right here where I break everything down. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks to our wonderful Patreons. Let me know what you think. Again, kind of something's going on, and I will see you in the next video.